1,000 tons of waste added to Birmingham's streets every single day, rats multiplying, pest control calls up 75%, and 1.2 million residents still paying council tax for a service that simply stopped. This wasn't a missed collection. Britain's second-largest city ran out of money to empty its bins. The reason starts with a single number: £760 million. In Birmingham, the simple act of taking out the rubbish became an exercise in frustration. Week after week, bins filled and then overflowed, leaving streets lined with black bags, broken boxes, and the stench of rotting waste. For a city of 1.2 million people, the expectation was clear. Around 500,000 waste collections carried out every week, a system designed to keep pace with 1,000 tons of new rubbish added daily. But as the trucks stopped coming, the piles grew. Council tax bills still landed on doormats, demanding payment for services that had ground to a halt. This was not a minor delay or a missed collection in a single neighbourhood. It was a breakdown on a scale rarely seen in a modern British city, a basic promise between local government and its residents, broken in plain sight. The council's response was to declare a major incident, scrambling to bring in extra vehicles, hire outside crews, and borrow support from neighbouring authorities. Yet even with these emergency measures, the backlog kept growing, and the city's normal routines dissolved into frustration and anger. The visible chaos on Birmingham's streets was only the most obvious sign of a deeper collapse, one that left residents wondering how a city of this size could run out of money to do something as fundamental as empty the bins. On September 5, 2023, Birmingham City Council issued a Section 114 notice. In plain terms, this meant the council's chief finance officer had declared the city could no longer balance its books. From that moment, all new spending across the council was frozen unless it was essential. For a city of Birmingham's size, this was the financial equivalent of pulling an emergency brake. Every department, every service, suddenly became a cost problem to be managed, not just waste collection. The roots of this emergency ran deep. At the heart of the crisis sat a projected £760 million equal pay liability. This was not a theoretical number. It represented decades of underpaid staff, mainly women, now owed back pay by law. The council's own figures showed the liability growing by as much as £14 million every month, leaving the budget gap for that year alone at £87 million. There was no realistic way to meet these obligations with the money available. Compounding the problem, the council's Oracle YT system, meant to streamline finances, had become a source of chaos. Launched in April 2022 with a £19 million budget, costs ballooned past £123 million, and the system failed to produce reliable financial data. Without clear accounts, the council struggled to even see where money was going, let alone control it. Manual workarounds drained further funds, and oversight of basic services like waste collection became guesswork rather than management. The government stepped in, appointing a team of commissioners to oversee Birmingham's finances and ensure essential services did not collapse entirely. Their remit stretched across the council, but the logic was simple. With every pound under scrutiny, even the most basic service, emptying the bins, became a question of what the city could afford, not what residents expected. Industrial action in Birmingham's waste service did not begin with a simple walkout. It grew out of a bitter dispute over pay, job roles, and a long-running grievance about how different kinds of work were valued within the council. From January 2025, bin workers began a series of stoppages. The conflict sharpened around the council's plan to remove the Waste Recycling and Collection Officer, or WRCO, role, a position that paid more than frontline loader jobs and carried extra responsibility for supervising routes and meeting recycling targets. Unite, the main union, warned that about 150 workers faced losing up to £8,000 a year, nearly a quarter of their income. For many, this was not just a pay cut, but a threat to their mortgages and families. The council argued that removing the WRCO role was necessary to reduce its exposure to further equal pay claims. Officials insisted that alternative jobs were available and that the changes would help protect the council's finances. But workers saw the move as an attack on their conditions and a way to balance the books at their expense. Underneath the pay dispute ran the unresolved legacy of equal pay battles. Male-dominated jobs in waste collection had historically been paid more than female-dominated roles elsewhere in the council, leading to years of legal claims and a mountain of liability. By the 11th of March, 2025, the dispute boiled over into an all-out strike. Unite's General Secretary, Sharon Graham, became the public face of the workers' anger, accusing the council of breaking faith with its staff. What began as a technical argument about job roles and pay grades became a street-level crisis, with the city's bins overflowing as the legal and financial pressures inside the council spilled out onto the pavements. Attempts to save money on Birmingham's waste service set off a chain reaction that made the city's financial problems even worse. After the industrial dispute escalated and regular crews walked out, the council relied on agency staff to keep the bins moving. The numbers tell the story. Between April and December 2024, spending on agency workers in waste and fleet operations came in at just over £4.3 million. In the same period a year later, that figure had jumped to more than £8.8 million, more than double in just 12 months. The pattern was clear even before the strike reached its peak. Average monthly agency costs climbed from £481,000 before the stoppages to £971,000 as they began. By March 2025, the bill for agency staff alone passed £1.2 million in a single month. The council explained that these costs covered not only basic bin rounds, but also extra waste work like clearing fly tipping and providing holiday cover. But the union, Unite, accused the council of using agency labour to undermine the strike and push through changes that would leave permanent workers worse off. For the city's finances, the effect was a textbook false economy. Efforts to cut costs and reduce legal risks by changing job roles ended up driving up emergency spending. Residents still needed their bins emptied, so the council paid out for temporary cover, crisis cleanups, and outside help. Instead of saving money, Birmingham found itself spending more to deliver less. Warnings of a public health emergency began to circulate as the waste crisis deepened. Nearly 19,000 tons of rubbish piled up across Birmingham, creating a perfect feeding ground for rats and maggots. Pest control calls surged by 75%, with residents reporting rodents the size of cats tearing into split bags and nesting in alleys. The stench of decay hung over entire neighbourhoods, and blocked pavements forced children to walk around heaps of trash on their way to school. Elderly residents, some living alone, struggled to carry waste through crowded hallways or up flights of stairs, their homes filling with bags for want of any other place to put them. Recycling collections were halted citywide. The recycling rate collapsed to just 14% between July and September, with only 12,471 tons of material separated out of more than 90,000 tons collected. For many, the effort to sort rubbish felt pointless. When the bins went uncollected, everything ended up rotting together. Overcrowded homes, already short on space, became overwhelmed by the backlog. In some streets, rubbish blocked doorways and driveways, trapping residents inside. The environmental toll was matched by a growing sense of despair. The daily reality was not just unsightly or inconvenient. It was a threat to health, flies and vermin spreading disease, air thick with dust and mold, and a growing anxiety that the basic trust between city and citizen had broken down. Each new pile of waste was a reminder that the system meant to protect public welfare had failed in its most visible and essential duty. Overflowing bins are only the surface of a much deeper crisis in local government. Beneath the piles of rubbish, Birmingham faced a tangle of obligations and shortfalls that stretched far beyond waste collection. government-appointed commissioners warned that the city still had to resolve its historic equal pay liabilities, debts that continued to accumulate, draining resources month after month. Even as emergency measures cleared some streets, the council was required to deliver around £300 million in savings. That meant selling off assets at an unprecedented scale. £500 million in the first year, followed by another £250 million the next. Community centres, parks, and even social housing were put up for sale, raising cash but leaving lasting scars on neighbourhoods. At the same time, the council asked for a 9.99% council tax rise to help close the gap, but was allowed only 7.49%. Despite this increase, budget documents still projected shortfalls of £83.1 million in 2026 to 2027, £127.9 million in 2027 to 2028, and £158.9 million in 2028 to 2029. The visible breakdown in bin collection became a warning sign for the whole system. Underneath, legal claims, technology failures, outside oversight, rising taxes, forced asset sales, and industrial disputes all pressed on the city's ability to provide even the most basic services: libraries, social care, youth programs, roads, street cleaning, and housing. The crisis in Birmingham shows what happens when a council becomes too financially weak to keep its promises to the people it serves. Birmingham's bins exposed what happens when invisible deficits finally spill onto the streets. Today, over 40 English councils face similar financial strain. If basic services collapse in the UK's second city, nowhere is immune. The next crisis may already be building, one silent spreadsheet error at a time.